Fellas, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a very, very challenging time the last couple of days. Obviously, with the world news of the war breaking out in the Ukraine, the invasion in the Ukraine, which I'm obviously not qualified to speak on, so I won't. But also out of that, obviously our owner is very much connected to it, and news has been breaking out at wildfire the last few days about what his intentions are with this club. And today we heard some stories that have broken out that he's looking at the potential sale of Chelsea Football Club, a quick sale. And there are some interested buyers. Obviously, Jim Ratcliffe, who we've heard before, a British billionaire who was interested in the club a few years ago and just couldn't really meet the demands that Roman had put on the table. That's not the only one I've heard. There's also some, I don't want to get into the specifics, but I did hear of another rumor of another big sort of like conglomerate wanting to buy Chelsea and sending an intermediary to Roman, to Chelsea Football Club, to see if they can broker a deal. It didn't materialize. But not only that, but we also have, I believe his name is Hans-Jörg Wyss, who's a Swedish philanthropist and billionaire who has come out in a local paper in Switzerland saying that basically Roman wants to sell the club and he may be interested with a consortium of people in the purchase of the club. And that news pretty much shook the community from its foundation. Obviously, I was of the opinion that just because Roman has already stepped away from the football operations of this club, that something like this was probably imminent, just because you don't do that, put in the care of trustees if you don't feel like you may be forced to sell at some point, where you may have to be subject to sanctions and whatnot. And it seems like that's where this is going, which is why Roman is trying to get a quick sell in. Now, with that said, obviously, we as Chelsea fans have to look at what that means for us in the long term. First of all, I want to say that Roman Abramovich has been an incredible owner. I'm not going to say that the work that he has done for this club hasn't been, obviously yeoman work. He's obviously taken this club from a position where they hadn't won a league title since 1955 to winning five or six titles since he's come in. We've also won the Champions League a couple times, Europa League, goes on and on. He's won the set and he should be commended for that. But I just feel like the ties that he has to Russia and to Putin in particular is just too much weight. It's just way too much attention, too much negative attention. And you really can't divorce yourself of his ties to the Kremlin right at this point in time. It's the two go hand in hand given the climate that we are facing right now in the world. So it only makes sense that Roman's looking to sell, and it only makes sense that he's looking for a quick sell. And with that said, and keep in mind, guys, these are just my musings. I have no real inside information as far as how this stuff works. This is just me thinking out loud and hoping that what I say resonates with you, or you guys can offer some opinions back the other way that will help me shape my opinion, my thoughts on this matter a little bit better. But we have to look at other aspects of this club as well. Obviously, Roman has to protect his interests, he has to protect his assets, and with the impending sanctions that may come down if the Ukraine and Russian situation does not resolve in a amicable fashion sometime soon, Roman has to start thinking about where his assets are and what the ramifications are for not necessarily coming out and being outspoken against the Kremlin and Putin in particular. So we have obviously our responsibilities to our sponsors, our corporate sponsors as well. Nike, obviously, our shirt sponsor our shirt manufacturer in the U.S. They will be looking at this incident. You'd have to think that our shirt sponsor will be looking at this particular conflict and also be wanting questions and answers. And, just going beyond that, like, even if we come out of that, like, does Chelsea now look as desirable to corporate sponsors as they once were. My assumption is no, just because this is just something that you don't want to attach your brand to. You kind of look at it as like this is a real invasion, and as much as Abramovich clearly is not the focus of this invasion, he is certainly attached to it. I mean, the fact that he was even called into the conflict, called into the invasion by the president of the Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken, to at least be an intermediary between Russia and the Ukraine to try and broker some sort of a peace deal, tells you how involved he is in this entire situation. This is not just, it's not like just getting any old celebrity to come in. They went for Roman Abramovich and asked him to come and be intermediary. So that in and of itself tells me that he is much more connected than we choose to let on. Like this is a serious conflict right now. So yeah, with that said, I would say that like our corporate sponsors would probably look at that and be like, yo, probably not the best situation to invest in Chelsea right now. And we are so heavily dependent on that, and beyond that, like we have to look at the sanctions itself too. If Chelsea decide, or if the UK government decide to put sanctions on Roman Abramovich, that will indirectly affect Chelsea as well. Whether or not he can still hold Chelsea as his club, but whether or not he has the ability to financially invest in the club is a completely another thing altogether. And I think that Roman, being who he is and understanding that this is something that he may not be able to get himself out of, he's looking for the best interest of the club, which is commendable as well. And he is probably looking to recoup it on his investment. Currently, I think Chelsea Football Club owe Roman Abramovich, or Fordstrom, or however you want to look at it, Fordstrom, £2 billion, and we clearly do not have the money to pay off that debt. So anyone that does come in, anyone that wants to buy Chelsea, has to do so knowing that they have £2 billion to repay to Roman, and then also they'd have to be able to buy the club outright from him. And I can guarantee you that if you look at any valuation of Chelsea right now, it's upwards of $2 billion. So you have to have somebody with really deep pockets to come in and take over the ownership of this club. And the things that we're all concerned about is, like, obviously you don't want any sort of like hedge funds to be coming in and taking over the club, because you don't want them to be using liquid assets to siphon money from the club to build their portfolio and their profile. You want somebody that has deep pockets and has obviously a love for football, is passionate about the sport. And that's a rare find. Like Roman Abramovich, say what you want about him as you say what you want about him regardless of what you think about him as a businessman. In terms of his love for the football, his love for Chelsea Football Club, it's undeniable. He didn't go into this to try and, siphon money out of the club. He's gone into this because he wanted to build a winner. And, he basically won every trophy there was possible to win in his time as owner of this football club. And he was in it for that particular reason. If you bring in somebody else, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that is as passionate about football as he is. So it is a difficult time when you consider how lucky we've been to have him as our owner, just because he wasn't really about trying to make money off of it. Anyone else that comes in, if it's some sort of a hedge fund like Man United, or how Kroenke uses Arsenal, or even just on a humanitarian level, if we decide to go with Saudi money, or I don't even know if they're interested, but the PSGs, the Man Cities, and Newcastles, there's all sorts of like human rights violations there as well. So we move out of one and then into another. I don't think that's going to be, that's not a situation that Chelsea should be looking to get into right now. Obviously, image is a very big part of, expanding our corporate brand, expanding this club. And right now, the image of this club is probably at an all-time low, just because of the connections, whether directly or indirectly, that we have to, this conflict. And yeah, we have to think about our next moves very, very carefully. And I think that Roman loves the club enough that he would not put us under the stewardship or care of somebody or some beings who don't have the best interests of the club at heart. With that said, we don't have a lot of time. If what we're hearing is true in the media, then the sale of the club is imminent, and there are the sharks are circling. And if that is the case, then it's going to be very difficult for Roman to choose the right suitor, and vet that particular suitor properly enough to make an educated decision about who he wants to take over as Chelsea Football Club's owner. But having said that, guys, this, as I said before, is a precarious time, and it is a very, very delicate topic. I know this is gonna divide the fan base, even just what I said today, even though I don't really come from a position where I'm pro or against. I'm just looking at the situation as it is, as it unfolds. I think that as Chelsea supporters, we have to be looking at it as such. We can't be biasly looking at it through blue tinted goggles and whatnot. We have to look at the situation, the conflict that is erupted, and scrutinize it the way it should be, like any other conflict that we would. I'm looking at this with a large amount of scrutiny, and in my opinion, the only viable solution is for Roman to walk away from the club, and whether or not he wants to or not, seems like that's where the tone and tenor of this whole situation is moving. But having said that, I don't think that we have to worry about Chelsea Football Club. The reason why I'm in love with this club is not because of Roman Abramovich. Obviously, he's given us some great moments, but it's the spirit of this club, the soul of this club that I am most attached to. And I think that continues on long before Roman and long after Roman, long before me, long after me. So, we just got to continue doing what we do as a football club, continue to, shock the world and win against all odds, which is what we've been doing, for as long as I can remember, really. So, as long as we continue to do that, keep the spirit and soul of this club intact, then I think that we'll be fine, regardless of who our owner is or what the situation is. We just got to be Chelsea and keep the blue flag flying high.